All right. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody's doing good.
Hello.
Been hasn't been that long, right?
It's been
Well, actually, we missed last week. That's why.
we missed last week, but that's because we were
Yeah. So
preparing for this week.
we got a new schedule now, right? So our schedule is it's gonna be every 2 weeks that we have the hut live, right? And the reason for that is because we wanted more time to because Sundays after church, I mean, we're busy. We're getting everything ready for Monday, and then if I'm preparing my message, I have to prepare 2 messages, or they're static. It's probably because it's too loud. Maybe I don't know. It's fine. I mean, we'll fix it. So we're having a little bit of issue, but if you can hear us, that's good. But I think it sounds good still. Are you okay? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, we have a we have we have a new schedule, and this new schedule is bi-weekly. So the first Monday we prepare, we study, we meet together, which is I mean Shane, Adrian, and myself, right? And we're trying to do this in a different method of not just getting there and just kind of don't want to say wing it, but
Well,
you
we
wing
didn't
it. Right?
we didn't want it to feel like this impromptu thing.
Yeah.
Where we just show up and then in 10 minutes we're live and we're like, oh, by the way, here's the notes.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be able to have a set day that we can push aside everything else and say,
Yep.
okay, this Monday we're preparing our word for next Monday so that we have a whole week to study and get ready for that. That way you guys are getting more quality content from us.
Yeah.
I think that counts for a lot. So
If
we got 4 people watching, so
Yeah. So we're glad that you're watching.
so we're getting started here.
Yeah. So let me just make so the knob at the top next to the input, that's the volume if it's too loud. But sorry, I'm giving instructions to Victoria so she can help us out, so you can make it so it can sound better out for you guys.
Victoria's over here doing all
So, the topic that we have for tonight, let's just pray real quick right now where we are. God, thank you, God, for this day. Giving us, God, we thank you, God, for just everything you're doing in our life, for what you did this past Sunday, for the amount of people that we had, the 2 Sundays in a row. It's been good, God, and I mean, it's something that I've been praying for and that we've all been praying for, and that's in our hearts, and seeing your hand move in that, in the midst of us thinking that is this really it? You show us that you have more for us. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So today the teaching is about a road trip, right? And when you have a road trip, everybody has road trips, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a road trip to an 8-hour trip or a 4-hour trip. It can be just right now your trip from my house to your house. That's a road trip, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, like you said, it doesn't have to be a trip like to another state or, one city over. Like for us, a trip for us would be like from here to Corpus.
Yeah.
But if we're just driving to your house, it's 10 minutes. So it's like, this is just like a little sprint,
Yeah.
So it can feel like a trip sometimes, even if it's just a little small distance, because it can be hard, or it can be a difficult trip that or journey that feels like it's just ongoing. You feel like when does it end or when does it get better? So kind of what we want to illustrate to you guys tonight is how we can translate a road trip into biblical terms, where we can all kind of put 2 and 2 together so it can be more relatable to everyone. Because we all have been on trips before, I imagine. There isn't very many people that I don't think have never left their own town. Even if it's just a town over, I don't think they've ever stayed home.
Yeah.
But hopefully this will be relatable to you guys. And of course, if you have questions throughout this, feel free to put a comment in the chat, and we will address that as we get them. But let's go ahead and get started.
Is it working? Is it working?
Victoria, why do you have a flashlight?
The Zoom, it's causing it's super staticky. Oh, okay. But is it gonna work or is it gonna be good? Yeah. Okay.
Are we talking too loud or what? Oh, okay.
There's an interference, right? Yeah. We'll get that fixed out for the next time. But the verse that we're gonna be at is in Romans 8:28, right? And that verse, when I was thinking about the road trip, the last one that we had was towards the valley, right? And Ella was with us, and it was her first trip to the valley, and man, it was a trip with Ella in the car seat. Um, because I mean, back then I was used to just get in the car, let's go straight, 8 hours straight, just go, nonstop, just no interference, just nothing. And then now that I have to carry my daughter in the car, it's like you gotta stop every maybe an hour or 30 minutes, and you gotta pull over. You gotta actually use the rest areas. You gotta actually change. You gotta change your diaper, dude. Just let them stretch their legs and everything, right? And the road trip is a lot of us, we have it planned, right? You plan your trip, unless it's something where something tragic happens in your family and you just unexpected. And usually we plan things, right? You plan your trip to SeaWorld. You plan it to, I don't know, Florida. You plan it to wherever you're going to go. And we all have to plan. And when you plan it, there's a purpose for your planning, right? And that's a good saying, because there's a purpose on why you're planning, and you plan it because you want for it to be a good experience, a wonderful time. In Romans 8:28, it says, the point that I have here first, before I go into the verse, um, what's one thing that can happen on a road trip,
I mean, flat tire.
right? A flat tire.
Car troubles. Whole lots of stuff. You can get lost. You can get sidetracked to where it's like there was one time that me and Marlene. This was like way years ago when I first took her to Oklahoma to visit. Yeah, so this was well before it. And on the way back, we decided to like pull off of I-35 and go into this small town to get some dinner. We were hungry, so So we were like there on our phones googling like what's good to eat. So we ended up at this restaurant called Babe's Chicken, or was it Babe's Chicken? It was in. Well, I know for sure it was in Sanger, Texas.
Yeah.
And we ended up spending 3 hours there because it was like an hour wait. It was an hour to get our food, an hour to eat, get ready, and it just kind of felt like, and we just got sidetracked big time. We could have just stopped at Whataburger 15 minutes and we would have been on the road.
Yeah.
But we made a adventure out of it. It wasn't like a bad. It wasn't really a negative thing. I mean, we got home late, but that's probably an example of a good thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've never like ran off the road or got sucked under a semi or anything, but
things can happen.
But stuff happens, yeah.
And the point that I have in mind was, a vehicle can break down, right? It's a generic thing that can happen. Your car breaks down. It's what happens. It leaves you stranded. It leaves you in the middle of nowhere. It leaves you just stranded. It leaves you something that you relied on, that you said, I'm trusting this car to get me from here to there, and I'm gonna trust it to get me there. And then you're like, oh, I know how to fix it because I'm a mechanic, or maybe you know how to work on cars. But what if this is a mechanical failure, which means that there's something that's more than just a flat tire? What if it's something that makes it where you can't repair it, right? And what I'm learning in life right now, in currently is there's going to be times where we can't repair things, where we can't just say, I can fix it, or take me to the doctor, or take me somewhere.
Yeah.
And when you think about a road trip, I thought of this verse. It says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So when you think about that, a road trip can be good, but it can also be bad, right? And a road trip, it depends, right? It depends how long you spend with that certain people that you're going with. Because eventually you start getting at each other's neck, or there's a note here that I have here that says too many people in one centralized location for too much of a long period of time
Mm.
is dangerous.
I mean, I can only imagine you and your two sisters in the back of a expedition going to Houston or something, you know.
And yeah, and the good thing you say that, because when we were driving to these trips, we knew that either someone had to be in the last row. We were divided, so someone in the last row, and someone in the middle, and then someone in the front. Or because Tabby got older, right? So she was able to sit in the front. But when you think about all these things, is we have to remember that the things that we do now, the things that you do now, the things that you're doing right now, you're watching this, is because you're either looking more for God or you're trying to find an answer for something that you cannot fix. And what I'm trying to tell you is that God is trying to tell us in this season that in this moment that we're in, when something breaks down, it's not so that you break down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so that you. It's not so that you give up. It's not so that you say, "I'm done. This is it. I'm just gonna forget about everything." Recently, I had another person or two people pass away because of suicide, and it's like that's become the normal thing of where you just say, "Hey, I'm gonna take this easy way out," and that's it. And we have to remember that there's someone out there that loves you, that believes in you, that gave you a calling.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why you planned that road trip. And what happens in the planning of the road trip and the experience is you start getting into these fights with your loved one, or something happens and you disagree, and the enemy just comes in, or maybe not even the enemy, maybe it's just yourself. I mean, you're just so angry and just so angry at something, or maybe you didn't like the way that someone blinked while you were in the car, or maybe you didn't like the person that.
Oh man, I get triggered so easy when I'm driving.
Or maybe it's not even someone in your car. Maybe it's someone driving next to you, or maybe someone didn't use a blinker. Simple things. And what I'm thinking about in this verse reminds us that even though when things seem to be falling apart, God is still at work.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when things seem to be so difficult, God is still at work.
Yeah.
And the reason why we know that is because He's called you according to His purpose. Right? So what I've learned in Romans 8:28, in that one verse, that's what I got.
Mm-hmm.
In that one verse, I was like, man, that one verse is telling me that if things fall apart, I still got to trust God. Whether things work out, I got to trust God. Whether they don't work out, whether it gets difficult, whether I lose hope, whether I gain hope, whether I lose love, whether I lose patience, whether I gain patience. What it does not matter the situation. What matters is that you continuously keep walking forward, even though you know that you might not be well, or even though you might be well.
Well, it's like we're walking on this journey. Unexpected things can happen. Like you can't prepare for everything. It's like for example, like when Marlene told me that she was pregnant, like with Evelyn, I wasn't prepared for that. It just came out of nowhere, right? So like stuff happens, and as far in our lives, and it doesn't have to be during a trip or in a car. And it's like you mentioned suicide, like that stuff you don't just wake up one day and decide that's what you're going to do. It has to be, it's kind of like Lego blocks or dominoes. Every day or every time something happens, another domino falls and you get closer to that end. And, it's when people, if you can visualize that, someone has to put their hand down and stop that last domino from falling, and I think that's where, it helps, not only us, running this is, if anyone has those type of struggles, feel free to reach out to us because, we have those struggles too, and it's closer to home than you think.
Yep.
The
next thing, right?
Yeah.
The
next thing, let's go to something good, okay?
Yeah.
So, what other things do you think we need on a road trip?
So I'm the type of person that if you go on a road trip with me, I don't stop. You know that.
Uh-huh.
So you got to make sure that you have all your snacks.
Right. So snacks, that's it. So, like, I was kind of thinking is like, okay, so if we're on this road trip, we're on this journey of life, snacks are something that you're going to want, all right? Now, you're probably thinking, how does snacks have anything to do with going to church? But listen to this. So, like, it's not about snacks per se, but it's more about preparing for this road trip. For us, on my side, me and my wife, we always make a trip to HEB or somewhere like that to get some snacks for the trip, because we're like DJ, we don't want to have to stop unless we need to. We usually only stop for the restroom, or if I'm falling asleep, which happens all the time because
Because we drive at night.
Yeah, because we drive at night. And we like to prepare ourselves for this journey by getting snacks, and of course it's going and putting gas in the car the night before, so you're not doing it in the morning or late at night. But the other thing too is, what do you think about when we go into church? Do we have to prepare that Sunday morning to go to church? Right? Like, we get up, we get dressed, we eat breakfast, and then we get in the car and we go. And some people travel miles and miles to go to a certain church because that's where they're rooted. And for us, we don't have a very long distance to travel, but when you have a 3-year-old, sometimes that 10-minute drive can feel like an eternity.
Yeah.
Because one, she's up, she might just had a bad night, she didn't sleep, or if she's not feeling well, or she's still asleep. And there's also times where we're all hungry. Like, we just wake up hungry that day, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's 9:45. We got to be at church by 10:15, and we don't have time to eat breakfast. So we always have to stop and get donuts or whatever. So what I'm saying is all these things kind of have to fall into place for your journey to kind of feel like it's been completed. To get to that finish line. So when it comes to our lives and following Jesus Christ and being good Christians and all this stuff, we kind of have to have this sort of preparation. We have to kind of know that there's things that we need to do in our lives to prepare for what's coming tomorrow and where we're going to go in our relationship with God. So that here comes the heavy stuff, right? So I have a Bible verse that I wanted that we could throw up there. It's Proverbs 16:9. I'll give you a second. So this Bible verse kind of tells us how, it's very short, but it's really to the point. It kind of tells us how we like to prepare everything, but it's really God who's in control. We want to get ready for where we're going, but God has the final say. So as soon as you get that up there, Victoria, I'll go ahead and read it. You good? Okay, so it's Proverbs 16:9. It says, the heart of the man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. So when I read this, I was like, it was kind of like one of those moments where it was epiphany. I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. I was like, I was literally like, I was on the Bible app and I was like, travel, preparing, and like trying to find these keywords that will that will get me to this verse that it literally, this was the very first result that I read, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah,
like, it was just brought to me. It was, and it just felt like, it just kind of came together, and it was one of those things where, whether our lives, it feels like it's a long distance journey to where it's struggle, and the good times, the bad times, and then sometimes it can feel like a real short thing. And that's where it comes to our, believing in God and knowing that He has our steps planned out ahead of us. It's not something that's just random. It's not a journey that we're going to follow the GPS and just go off a cliff one of these days. God's not going to put us down a cliff. He might put us through a U-turn, or He might put us through a crossroads, but it's never going to be down a cliff. And people always joke about the GPS thing. It's God's position. It's God's planning system and all this stuff.
Well, there's one that says God's plan of salvation.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of ways to put it. And one of my favorite movie or shows was The Office. And there was a time where Michael and Dwight, one of the couple main characters. If you haven't seen The Office, you should watch it, by the way. And they were following GPS because they're going to some convention, and it's like, turn right now, and they go straight into a pond. And it was the funniest thing because they were panicking, and he's like trying to, breathe, and it's like, they weren't even under the water. The car was like in a foot of water, so that wasn't sinking. But that's a whole other point, how we panic. But anyways, that's kind of where I was. I wanted to throw in my part, and we went from snacks to falling off cliffs. So hopefully all that makes sense.
No, yeah, but it does, because the next thing that can happen. See, so I had kind of what can happen. My section of the podcast for today was what can happen in the road, right? What can happen in on that? What can happen on that actual time of you being on the road, right? And mine, the next one that I have is the one that I hate the most. I hate this the most. Whenever I'm on a road trip, I hate it the most. And yes, I'm not supposed to say hate, but I just despise. Bad weather. I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well,
one thing that I do not like to. I mean, I love the rain. The rain is awesome, this and that, but when I'm at home.
yeah.
But if I'm in the middle of it and I'm driving and everybody's going 80 miles an hour or I'm trying to go like 55 or 60 and with my hazards on, because I'm talking about pouring rain. Right? These conditions happen. Bad weather happens. And it can impact your road trip, right? So it's important to check the broadcast, right? The forecast before you hit the road, or it's important to see if there's going to be ice, snow, or there's going to be rain, right? Sometimes we don't plan those things. We just leave. We just say, hey, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I
Right,
mean, it could just be like a spontaneous decision. Let's go to Galveston.
Yeah,
Let's go to.
and there's like a hurricane happening in
Yeah,
Galveston.
and our car gets totaled by hail or something. You know?
And those things, what happens is it makes the road difficult and dangerous, right?
And that leads to our lack of preparation,
Yeah.
our lack of knowing where we're going. You know,
Because we should have checked. We should have been like, hey, yeah, I mean, I'm going somewhere. Let me see how the weather is, or maybe, I mean, like if you're like me, I like to do barbecues randomly, and for some reason, all the time, whenever I want to choose this day to do a barbecue, it rains. When it doesn't rain the entire week, but it rains.
yeah.
And then I'm over here complaining. I'm like, really, out of all days, but I should have watched the news, or I should have at least checked the weather, or I should have checked something, right? And the verse that I have for that is in Job 26, 8 through 11, right? In Job 26, 8 through 11. So when I was reading this, it kind of it made me think of a lot. Romans 26, 8 through 11. It made me think about spiritual life. It made me think about physical life. It made me think about our destination, our destination. It made me think about, in general, everything. And the reason why I did that is because in verse 8 it says, he wraps up the waters in his clouds, yet the clouds do not burst under their weight. Which means he wraps up the waters in his clouds, yet the clouds do not burst under their weight. Verse 9, he covers the face of the full moon, spreading his clouds over it. Verse 10, he marks out the horizon on the face of the waters for a boundary between light and darkness. Verse 11, the pillars of the heavens quake against at his rebuke. Verse 12, by his power he churned up the seas. By his wisdom he cut Rahab into pieces. When you think about all these things that happen, that sounds like a weather report.
Yeah, it's like a major event. It's something that, like growing up in Oklahoma, like tornadoes.
Yeah.
Like it's like it's one of those things where they warn you about this is coming.
Victoria got to a point, but I'll let her get ready.
Yeah, let her go.
She wants to say something. But I like this verse because it says there that he wraps up the waters in his clouds, yet the clouds do not burst. So what that made me think was, so then when I have all my issues, when I'm trying to just make it just through Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Friday, he has all these things, right? And the reason why we pray for him to go, I cast them all unto you, is because he's the only one that can carry them. If he can carry these clouds with water and they do not burst, then that means that he can carry everyone's weight. But we have to be willing to cast it off. Which means that in the middle of your road trip, you have to be willing to say, hey, I'm not going to be like this anymore. in the middle of you trying to get to your destination, maybe I might not snap when someone flips me off.
Mm-hmm.
Because the issue, I'm sorry, this was supposed to be this is a good point. But the issue is us.
Yeah. A lot. I mean, sometimes we just got to get out of our own way a little bit. Um, like on a trip, for example. If I start falling asleep or I can't drive anymore, I tell Marlene, "Hey, time to switch because I'm not gonna make it,
Yeah.
or I don't want to put us in danger, and just give me an hour or something."
It should be working. Are you good, man? Oh, you okay. So there's a song that I've been listening to. It was a song that came out a long time ago by Lecrae, and it's called "Blessings," right? And I think we all know this song. I was listening to the lyrics, and I never paid attention to them. But there's a piece what does it say? Do you remember it? It says, do you remember what it said? No? All we need is all we got, right? So he's saying that you have all these blessings. That, yeah, it's a blessing to have the car you got. It's a blessing to have the house that you have. It's a blessing to have life. It's a blessing to be alive. But you have to remember that it's also a blessing to see that all you need is all you got. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that you got now is a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is we kind of have to humble ourselves a little bit because we get these inspirations. I want this. I want to upgrade. I want to get the new thing. I want the new phone, whatever. And I always have to kind of remind myself, dude, yesterday you had that and you were just fine. But today you want this. And I always have to ask my question, why do you need this? And it's like, well, it's a new one. It's got the better
we try
camera.
to justify it. Yeah.
And we try to justify it in our own minds and our own means. But it's until we kind of confess it, and like, for example, if I go and tell Marlene, hey, I need new tires on my car, she's going to say, why? Well, they're old. Are they bad? Not yet, but they're old. Well, let's wait until they actually need to be replaced. But then I go and say, well, once the tire, my brakes don't work as good because the tires are slippery, like stuff like that. But that's probably not the best analogy.
But it's an example of where I want to get to is, and Job acknowledges the power of the elements that God has, that He can control the water, the clouds, the moon, when the light moves, when the light is light, when the dark is dark. He controls all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He controls all of them. And when you think about this, what that's letting me know in this verse, in this simple piece, is that God is in control of the ultimate thing, which means that God is in control of everything. Stop trying to drive your road trip and let God lead it. Which means that if we can trust the autopilot,
Mm-hmm.
we should be able to trust God too.
Yeah.
If we can trust the computer to keep that same velocity or that same speed, if we can trust it to stay there and stay within those lanes, what makes us different from trusting God?
Yeah, and it's crazy you say that because, like, we trust so much stuff every day in our lives to work and do things, but, like, a lot of us don't even give God a second thought, And, I mean, I'm guilty of that. I mean, I'm not going to say I never think about God, but it's like, I have to catch myself sometimes, and I have to remind myself, hey, man, like, you're here for a reason. Don't forget, like, you're in this chair, you're at this job because you got blessed to be here. Like, God wouldn't have put you here if He didn't want you here, and it's hard. We got to remind ourselves.
And that's why I'm saying that what I'm going through, it's a weird season I'm in. It's a season of figuring out that no matter that, yes, I can be in the pulpit, I can have amazing sermons and teachings and ideas, and we can say so many things, but then none of that matters if our hearts are not there.
Mm-hmm.
If our hearts don't trust God as how we say we do. Because in Proverbs 3, and we're almost done. In Proverbs 3, 5 through 6.
Trying to sneeze.
In Proverbs 3, 5 to 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He'll make you straight. Your path straight.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that in the midst of you being lost or confused or don't know what to do, or maybe you're just tired of living, or you're tired of what you've been traveling or how you've been traveling. This is telling us that we have to understand to trust God,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what road we go through. No matter if it's a bad doctor's report, no matter if it's a good doctor's report, no matter if it's if it's anything in our life, we have to trust God. And finally, the last thing that I have, which is my last point to close, is one thing that can happen in a road trip
Mm-hmm.
is a positive experience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you think about it. You get from point A, and you finally get to the finish line. You're like, I made it. I've
You're shocked.
I've been there, you know. And then when you leave, you're like, and you come back home, you can say, oh, I was there last week, you know. Or as people say, man, I want to go to Florida. Or
But then you're like, oh, but let me tell you the story when I was getting there.
yeah, don't go to that restaurant because they'll take 3 hours, you know. So
But the last thing that I have is a positive experience, which means that in this positive, you're probably wondering what can be positive of everything you just said. My car broke down. I got lost. My snacks, we didn't want to stop and pull over for snacks. What's positive about that? Well, the positive thing is that you got to see a good scenery. You got to eat delicious food. You met some interesting people, and you also made unforgettable memories.
hmm
It might not be a memory that you want to remember, but remember the time when you said this to me? Yeah, and I said this to you back, but you still remember it.
yeah. It's like I remember a time we all drove to Nacogdoches from the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the expedition. It was when your sister moved up there, and we were helping her get settled. And I was like, at like 4 hours in, I was like, take me home,
Yes, me too.
because I was like, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we don't even get there till like 8 in the morning. So it's like you don't sleep all night, and we're all in the chairs like this, and it's like, man, this is torture.
It is. I remember.
And then you got to look forward to the drive back. You know, it's like, man, I was ready to get a train, man, or an airplane or something. But
I remember those times.
yeah, but it's an experience. It's a trip of life, you know, and we're all going to go through those things. And I mean, even if it's bad, I mean, it's you've made it. You made it through. You know.
The verse that I have for this to finish is in. I was checking Facebook to see if anybody's watching or drop a comment. But the last thing that I got is Psalms 34:8. Psalms 34:8. It says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in Him." You're probably wondering, what does that have to do with a positive experience? Well, we have to understand that even though that your road trip was difficult, you still trusted to be with Him.
Mm-hmm.
You still trusted that your road trip was going to get there successfully. You still believed that you're going to make these memories. You still entrusted that God was still going to heal you. You still kept that positive understanding that God is going to move in your life no matter you see nothing moving. And that's what makes God an experience that no one can explain. It has to be something that you have to come and experience. So on Sundays, we invite you because there's an experience that we've been having that is unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
Where people just show up, we're full. Some days we're just like, where did everybody go? But these past 2 Sundays, it's been an amazing Sunday. And not just because people are here, but because God's move is going not just here, but around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Around the world, there's experiences that are happening that are just amazing. To finish is, I have one point that says, this verse reminds us that in the midst, in the mix of the trials and the tribulations and the bad experiences, we have to remind ourselves to give thanks to God, because there's a blessing that He's going to give you at the end. And what is that blessing? That blessing is for you to decide. I don't know what that is.
I mean, like for me, it'd be like Like we could have like the worst trip. Like my mom's commenting, she said Oklahoma and family, right? You know, she's always like, come visit. You know, come to see us. Okay, well it's 5.5 hour drive from our house, and it could be an easy trip or it can be a hard trip. But the blessing at the end is seeing my mom. You know, it can be the same thing for you. It's like, man, we got to do this 6 hour drive to the valley, but you get to see your grandparents, you get to see your aunts and uncles,
Everyone.
you get to see everyone. So it's not, we tend to just kind of focus on the bad. We focus on the trip, we focus on that, but we don't really ever think about the end and how good it feels to be there.
And we have to think about the end
Mm-hmm.
because the end is the beginning in our Christian life.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times too is if we can think about that and focus on what is to come, that'll get us through those hard times. That will get us through that journey. It'll help us get out of the valley and into into the meadow, or somewhere that's nice.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed. This was good. Now that I feel it, that I feel that we studied it and we brainstormed on it and we got together and we let God move. And then in this study, not that we've never let God move in any other study, but in this study, it's been an amazing difference to see that when you trust God and you leave it in God's hands, that He will have the words to give you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you are wondering where we are at, we are in the church, and if you want the address, drop a comment or message us, and we have service Wednesdays and we have service on Sundays. Sundays are at 10:30. I know everybody freaks out. You're like, what, 10:30? Yes, 10:30. You're not here till noon. Trust me, you're not here till 1.
Some of y'all have never been to a 9 o'clock church, man. It's quiet.
Yeah. So,
But, man,
I don't think I got any other announcements.
a big thing is we're going to start doing this every other Monday, so expect us 2 weeks from today. We'll be live again. So mark your calendars, do whatever you got to do. Remember, don't forget to, like our post here, like our live stream, share it with your friends and family on Facebook. You can also share it through text. I did that while we were getting prepared because not everyone has Facebook. Not everyone has social media, but we also do have, we have like a dual stream. So we're actually live on YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. So you can look up Promise Church, on
YouTube channel.
On YouTube. If you want a link to that, just make another comment here and we'll see it and we'll reply to you. And then if you guys have any prayer requests, if you have anything you just want to talk about, if you got something going on, if you want to volunteer here, if you want to help us out in any ways, whether it's with your time or your funds, we're always open to that. So don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to us. We're not claiming to be any big celebrities where you can't just call us up one day and talk to us. We're available to you. And our numbers are out there. And all you got to do is jump on the Facebook page, send us a message, and we're right there.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So you guys have a good night.
Yeah.
And you guys take care. And I think Victoria says she's getting ready to dismiss, but it should be good. All right. You guys take care.
Peace.